Preparations were underway to celebrate the second anniversary of the fall of the Bastille, July 14, 1789, the day the Revolution began. On that day, too, the National Assembly replaced the king as the true ruler of France. 2 years later, in July 1791, the National Assembly was locked into furious debate. Some claimed that the revolution had gone too far, others that it had not gone far enough. At issue was the new constitution. There were three main factions: the Jacobins, who sat on the left, the Conservatives, who sat on the right, and, in the middle, the Moderates. The Jacobins insisted that the revolution had just begun. They took as their guide a small book written decades earlier by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It was called The Social Contract. Rousseau maintained that if people could contract to be part of a group and then promise to do what was best for all, the group's decisions would be untainted by selfishness. Rousseau termed this unselfish commitment the general will. He maintained that it encompassed virtue, liberty, and equality. The Jacobins wanted to replace the privileged groups of France, the king, the nobility, the Catholic clergy, with the general will of the people. But before the general will could prevail, the Jacobins believed that they must first destroy the enemies of the revolution. The Conservatives chiefly consisted of the nobility and the Catholic clergy. They deplored the National Assembly's confiscation of church land and its insistence that priests and bishops swear their loyalty to the revolution. Some conservatives cited Edmund Burke, an English writer whose Reflections on the Revolution in France had appeared a few months earlier. For Burke, freedom depended not on eliminating factions, but on ensuring a balance among them. The violence of the Parisian mob illustrated the tyranny of unchecked power. The conservatives hoped to restore some of the functions of the king, the nobility, and the Catholic Church. The moderate faction had endorsed the revolution at the outset, but now they feared the violence of the mob in Paris. To help restore order and stability, the moderate faction proposed to retain the monarchy, but limit its power chiefly to vetoing radical legislation. The moderates also endorsed the work of Lafayette, who, as leader of the National Guard, was trying to keep the mob in Paris from running amok and overthrowing the government. Lafayette's task was not an easy one. More than a year before, tens of thousands of Parisians had invaded the palace at Versailles and dragged Louis XVI back to Paris. In June 1791, the king and his family attempted to escape from France. They were captured and returned to Paris. As the second anniversary of the fall of the Bastille approached, the king was watched incessantly by armed guards. Meanwhile, the poor of Paris sang, with demonic glee, "We'll win, we'll win. Let's string up the aristocrats from the lampposts." Whatever the outcome, the National Assembly's deliberations would change history.
All right, you guys stop. Rousseau is not a cookbook for a government.
No, but
Rousseau is the basic idea.
Okay, guys.
I think there are people who want the actual society of Rousseau's general will, and there are those who want the best for France. And that's what they call the general will. And I think that is what the problem lies in, is because, and I think clergyman or Noble Bathsheba emailed us all about who could define the general will. And I was just wondering if anyone had, because I think a lot of us have different perceptions and different interpretations of what the general will is. And
I think that I already have defined it. The general will is where we live in a society as equals, and we don't think about our own selfish motives. We think about what is best for our society, for France in general.
are you working towards the general will of France?
Of course.
Are you?
Yeah.
But we still don't agree, right?
Yeah.
So we have to keep that in mind, that just because we all are doing it, we still see things from very different angles.
If we're actually all in this for the general will, then what we're worried about is how our children are going to be educated best. And if they're going to be educated best by the clergy, then we need to send them to the clergy.
Everyone wants to provide a good healthcare system and a good education system to them. And I think what you're trying to say is that you want the state of France to be in charge of them, and you want public schools. But right now, the people who know how to do this is the church.
Okay. All right. I think perhaps you would citizen that she was quoting Burke showed just how undevoted that faction is to the revolution. Burke is like totally anti-revolutionary. Everything he says is undermining this revolution and what we are trying to do right now. By quoting him, you are showing just how much anti-revolutionary that faction is.
It is not anti-revolutionary in the sense that you think it is. You think it's anti-revolutionary in the sense that you think that he's trying to tell us we should go back to the Ancient regime, and I don't think that's at all what he's trying to say. And I think that there are plenty of very applicable and logical and understandable ideas that he has there that I think all of us should incorporate into our lives. And who's to say that everything that Rousseau says is 100%.
This is really important. I hate to break up the party here. However, we haven't talked about the royal sanction. We haven't changed that or amended that or given a full veto or any of those things. However, as it stands now in the Constitution, the king A has a substantive veto and B has to sign things into law.
I would like to direct your attention to both of the articles I've submitted, and I would ask that they point to the fact that I truly am invested in the future of France and in the unity. And while I understand that the Ancient regime symbolizes what many of you are very much against, what I ask you to see is that I am not the same king as I was then. And I think we can see just by fact that this is not necessarily working as well as it could, and that some sort of ultimate veto might help things along.
And there need to be a checks and balances in the National Assembly. And I know that we all look out for the general will, but it is not necessarily known if the people, the elected officials who will come after us, will necessarily look out for the general will. And I think that Louis, in general, looks out for the welfare of the nation and will be, like Lafayette said, an upholder of the general will.
Also, in terms of the Ancient regime, it was a travesty. We were supposed to build on the ashes of that. We were supposed to build from that. Why would we keep around a relic? It's basically an obsolete regime. And in terms of what Lafayette said at our last meeting, that the king is a cultural figure and this and that and the other thing, if you want culture, maintain your plays, maintain your music. That's decidedly political. That is not culture. Oh, if he's approving our laws.
Here all morning, listening to Lafayette's speech and everything else that's been going on, I have a few rebuttals to make. Now, Lafayette called the king a symbol of cultural tradition, and you admit that he does represent the Ancient regime, which we are trying. This revolution is about getting rid of the Ancient regime and moving forward to a society envisioned by Rousseau, embodied by the general will. The general will, yes, it is about putting aside partisan beliefs and moving on, doing what's best for the country instead of each selfish individual. This is what we are all here to do. However, after this, you said that the law is the general will. You definitely insinuated that the king, who has, by the Constitution, the legitimacy of making a law, that he is the general will.
I personally just feel, as much as that is an ultimate utopian ideal, and I think that we should strive to reach that point, I think it is utterly unrealistic and impossible.
This is a revolution. We're creating what we want for ourselves.
I think you can say that you're creating as much as you want, but it needs to come out in fact, and we are misinterpreting human nature. Human nature will not subside to that.
Although the king claims to be supporting the general will and the National Assembly, I think that this statement, which he wrote on 20th of June 1791, is pretty important. I hope that you will all listen to this. In this quote, he is discussing the National Assembly. When he refers to friends, he's referring to us in the National Assembly. Frenchmen, and especially you Parisians, you inhabitants of a city which the ancestors of His Majesty were pleased to call the good city of Paris, distrust the suggestions and lies of your false friends. He's claiming that we're lying to our French people, us, who are here for the general will. Return to your king. He will always be your father, your best friend. What pleasure will he not take in forgetting all his personal injuries and in beholding himself again in your midst when a constitution freely accepted by men shall cause our holy religion to be respected, the government to be established upon a firm foundation and made useful by its functioning, the property and position of every person no longer to be disturbed, and the laws no longer to be violated with impunity and liberty.
And he admits to having made mistakes in the past, but I don't think there's anyone in the room who has not made mistakes in the past. And I don't think that there's anyone in the room who has fully embodied the general will in every part of their life. And right now we are at a turning point in our society, and I think that the king is a crucial part of our tradition and our history, and to throw that away would be a travesty. I think we need to think about the fact that everyone in here is changing and making progress, and our king is leading or attempting to lead that movement and the imperative of progress. So I think that having a veto for our king is a very important way to check the possibility of the will of all taking over as it has in the past and as it has been lately.
He's two-faced, and he's against the National Assembly, something that we're all here for. And I think that what Citizen Vanessa said before completely proves that. And if you have any doubts, look it over again. If you weren't paying attention, look it over again, and you'll see exactly what his intentions are. He's showing one face to us and one face to his brothers. For instance, in May, his brother told him to reject the National Assembly. And you know what? We read just now that in June he did.
All laws and measures passed by the National Assembly must be signed and approved by the king before they go into effect. Although the king will be a guardian of the general will, the National Assembly will have ultimate power to overturn the king's veto in a timely manner with a 2/3 majority.
Here.
Okay? We have decided to incite a riot, and you're supposed to
That's supposed to be me.
We just had a riot.
There are at least 9,000 people standing outside and they're creating rage over this past event, especially by the women fashion.
I think that the National Assembly needs to look at the crowd assembled out here with their love and support of Grant.
We're all in danger in this room right now from the crowds outside, and I feel like I want a vote of confidence to authorize the National Guard to use force against these people who are inciting.
The revolutionaries? These people are speaking hard.
Listen, okay, I'm asking that you listen to me.
We're very controlled. It was just
The general will is this. Violence against our government cannot be tolerated. These people are acting outside of the law, outside of the general will. They do not have the legitimate support of this body for their actions. And I would like you guys to vote with me to reinforce that they do not have the legitimate support.
You are not part of the social contract. You are out of the social contract. They have broken the social
They're
contract.
acting outside the law.
I don't necessarily agree with them taking the laws into their own hands, but someone needed to do something.
You're talking about crowd control. They didn't enforce it, so people had to take matters into their own hands. These people are enemies of the revolution. We had to get them out of the country, out of Paris. So they're gone now, and we had to do that because the National Assembly didn't enforce their laws.
When people start taking the law into their own hands, the National Assembly is worthless.
And every member of this body is lucky to be alive because our lives were all threatened by an angry, violent crowd on Wednesday. And that's why you, not me alone, but you voted to put down the riot that occurred because it was dangerous, it was violent, it was disorganized, it was anarchy. It was exactly what we don't want.
I think that everyone here seems to think that they were in danger. Last week when the crowd attacked, I didn't think I was in danger because I was here fighting for the crowd. You were in danger from the crowd because you were against them. You placated the crowd before, but did you try on Wednesday? No. You said leave. You didn't say, we want to hear what you have to say, just calm down. You said leave. Okay? I was never in danger from the crowd because I am here for the crowd. I am here representing the general will.
Members of the National Assembly, it is a grave day in France. Late last night I received a message confirming the dangers expressed in the Declaration of Ponence. A quiet knock on my door was followed by this note being slipped under. Help is on the way. Soon France will be restored to its rightful regime. Your cooperation is expected. Leopold. Leopold assumes that I am in favor of his troops invading and wiping out all traces of the revolution. He thinks he's helping me. What he does not know is that my hopes lie in the potential peace and stability I know France is capable of. An attack would certainly not be conducive to such a goal, but it is too late for me to tell him. I believe they are on their way.
We were mistaken when we thought that writing to the Pope and asking for forces was a good idea. Because of the reason that Vanessa just pointed out, that we are unprepared. However, for some reason, Leopold and those in Prussia, however you want to say it, have decided that they are unhappy with the situation and that they are going to attack. It is not a question of whether or not they're going to attack, but a question of when they're going to attack. And they are also under the mistaken assumption that the king supports this. If we sit back and do nothing, then we are going to suffer greatly.
Lafayette said that we have other things to deal with, but I think dealing with some of our internal issues right now will help to deal with this. Right now, not everyone is allowed to be in the National Guard, and if we are planning on having an effective counterattack, I think that we need to have everyone who is willing to fight for France be able to fight for France.
I think that right now we're splitting hairs. The reality of the situation is the king and the clergy both got information that these troops will be in Paris either today or Wednesday. We have several options. Either we can pursue other agendas and wait for them to get here and kill our citizens, or we can organize an army. It might not be as powerful of an army as theirs is, but they are going to crush the revolutionaries here unless we do something. They're going to shut down this assembly and they're going to take control of France as well. So regardless of whether we have an incredibly powerful army, some army is better than no army.
I just think it's really amusing that today Lafayette is speaking, is really worried about anti-revolutionary forces being revolutionary forces being crushed when he was the one firing against our citizens at our last meeting. But and also I was a little curious as to why these monarchs believe that our king supports them coming in here.
You do not represent the majority of France, but a few select crazy Parisians.
Crazy?
Yes, I said crazy. Yes, I said crazy. Can I finish my thought? Second of all, I'm disgusted by the Jacobins in the crowd for using this situation, the danger that we're in, to manipulate the General Assembly. It's disgusting that you're taking this situation and playing a political opportunity. So I hereby make a motion to vote to declare war on Perugia and Austria.
I'm not arguing that we're all fighting towards exactly the same goals for France right now. What I'm arguing is that we're all fighting for France, and that's all that's important. Somebody's not sitting next to us saying, hey, do you want to go to war now? No, they're invading. We can't just sit here just acting like babies and fighting over, no, you did this, no, you did that, no, the other one, no. Somebody's coming in, invading, and we have to do something now. If you have any love for France at all, we have to go to war. Here.
Yeah. What we have to do is protect and make sure that there is a France for us to discuss and for us to defend and for us to recreate. And I think the only effective way to do that is to discuss planning an army. And if we're not going to do that, if we're going to address issues of the National Guard, then I think we need to follow Lafayette's plan and address all of the issues and sit back and establish this utopian France that will be crushed. We can have this ideal, we can, serve as this textbook case of what to do and how to fix the government so that it's this perfect society, and then we'll be crushed, and it will have a good story to tell in our history books.
Reacting to the Past is brought to you by Barnard College. This pedagogical initiative has received funding from the Fund for the Improvement of Post-Secondary Education of the U.S. Department of Education. Reacting consists of a series of month-long games, each of which explores a moment when the collision of ideas has changed history. For more information on the programs, go to the website. Every reacting class has its own personality, and each class, though it is playing the same game and working through similar materials, responds to them in different ways. What follows is an unedited tape of my class's attempt to write a new constitution for France in 1791. We too debated whether the king should have veto power, whether the Declaration of the Rights of Man should protect property rights, and whether it was possible to create a government based on Rousseau's general will. I was a Jacobin.
The king's power to veto, the assembly has taken over themselves and thus France. So, without the king's power to veto, we will become again have another tyranny.
Danielle?
Can I ask you a question? Are you a Republican?
Republicans don't exist.
I mean, do you? No, actually, they do in the sense of, do you believe in a republic?
I believe in everyone's right to vote, but I also within means, because at this point, how are we going to have every man to vote?
I'm just confused because up until a few months ago, the Fouillants were Jacobins, and you guys still consider yourself Republicans, and you believe in Republican principles, or at least that's what your club stands for, moderate republicanism. And so I'm kind of confused because, I'm not hearing any solid evidence against the idea of a republic. I'm just hearing cynicism, and that's not what I thought you guys stood for.
Well, I'm looking at the world as it is.
You're looking at the opinions of someone I haven't even heard of.
Never vote.
Barnard? I mean, I just don't see any concrete evidence. It seems that all we're getting here is cynicism, and that how a king can check elected representatives, the entire idea of the general will. It sounds like you don't believe in a Republican form of government. You don't believe in any feasible form of representation. It sounds like you just don't believe in Rousseau. I'm just wondering,
No, it's not that I don't believe in Rousseau. I, in fact, do believe in Rousseau, but I know that Rousseau also created a utopia. He did not create a world within the world we live today.
So do you believe in the general will?
I believe in the general will within a means. It's hard for the general will to exist because it can be perverted. I believe in the general will if every man gets his vote, but every man does not have the chance to get his vote.
Then you don't think I think what you're mistaking our cynicism to be is our being practical. What we're trying to do is be practical. We want the king to have veto power, and we want the king to have this limited role to be practical. We can't erase ourselves from history. It was our history. We've had a monarch for thousands of years, and we want him to have a little bit of power to represent to other countries and to represent ourselves, to not lose ourselves of our history. I mentioned in my paper, with this revolution, France has bought a new house, and we have the power to renovate it, add new rooms, etc., etc. But if we break the foundation and on what it was built, if we get rid of the king, the house will crumble. We can't just totally revolutionize France. We have a history and we can't part from it, is what we're trying to say. And we were a member of your club and we understand that. But to create tension between us, I don't think that's going to really do anything. We have to be moderate and we have to be willing to compromise. Deanie and Danielle.
I just want to address very quickly to something said about do you believe in Rousseau? And I'd like to read a quote from Rousseau where Rousseau writes in his Discourse on the Science and the Arts, I will ask merely, what is philosophy? What do the writings of the best-known philosophers contain? What are the lessons of these friends of wisdom? To listen to them, would one not take them for a troop of charlatans, each crying from his own place on a public square, come to me, I alone do not deceive. When we take Rousseau to be the letter of the law, where we can't go in either direction from him, we're actually contradicting what he's saying. His philosophy is not meant to be applied in this strict way. We need to be able to work with it and compromise.
Go ahead, Danielle.
But it seems like all we're doing is compromising. It seems like you guys, I understand the need, I understand your arguments for moderation, I understand you're afraid of the instability that you see around you. But don't you realize that this is what the people of France want? Why is this a revolution and not just a revolt? This is because people want to erase their history. Why do you think we're talking about starting at the year 1? We want to erase the old regime, including all signs of the monarchy. We're not proud of our history. We want to erase it. And if you're talking about practicality and hard evidence, I mean, if you look at feudalism, you can't find more hard evidence than that. It's the slavery we've been living under for the last centuries. That's what we're trying to overthrow here. You seem just completely in denial of any possibility that it could work.
Ritu, Palela, and the king.
The people who represent you and are a part of you are starving in the street. And you say, we must do it peacefully. But you sit in your cushioned chairs and refuse to rise and get your hands dirty. We are willing to sacrifice sacrifice ourselves for the good of our country, and you are not. That is where the difference lies. Violence is a necessary thing because we understand the true values of natural birth.
If there was a way that we can I just say something?
Yeah.
The way your voices are heard are through the assembly and through the laws that you pass, and you guys have so much more power over us, so much more privileges. I mean, this is our way of having our voices heard, and I mean, we've tried other ways. It's not like we're just barbarians and we just decided to go out and kill everyone and shoot everyone in the street. It's not that. For years and years, we've suffered, and this is the way we found out that our voices will be heard, by going out there and showing you guys what it is exactly we can do, how desperate our situation is, the fall of the Bastille, all of that. I mean, those are those big revolts are the ones that led to actual actions towards our cause.
Those were the things that caused change. If you would pay attention to us while we were sitting peacefully, then we would have continued to do so. But you did not. You ignored us. And only until we became violent did anything change in this revolution. And we will continue to act violent until you are willing to change without us.
Okay.
We understand that. That's what we're doing.
Order. Excuse me. Ignore the crowd when they're
Changing for your own luxuries, not for the
You're not even here. You guys are doing
Thank you.
Ignore the crowd. You guys are here to talk about.
Emily.
Ignore this.
Exactly. I mean, your attitude towards us is ignoring. They have no clue what they're talking about.
Emily, go ahead.
We're not.
Emily, go ahead.
I think we all agree that our system of government needs to be changed. I mean, we had this analogy of like the foundation built on the king, and without the king, our house will crumble. Just notice that everything seems to depend on our king. Like, once he's gone, our government is supposed to crumble. Do you remember the analogy, Bishop, in the Bible, which talks about the house on the sand and the house on the rocks? That the fool builds his house on a foundation of sand, and it seems stable, but when the storm comes in, it washes the foundation away and the house will fall. But the house built on a foundation of rocks will, last through the elements. Therefore, we can't have a foundation on a king because he's one person. He can die, he can commit treason, he could be assassinated, and then our nation will fall. Therefore, we can't rely on the king based on this, not just his moral rectitude, forget his personal stuff, just based on the fact that we base our entire government, our symbol, our history, our finances, our economy, our army, our navy, and our laws on one person. That is not a good foundation. That's a foundation of sand. And on the
les aristocrates à la lanterne, ça ira, les aristocrates on les prendra, la 300 ans qui nous promettent qu'on va nous accorder du pain, la 300 ans qui donnent des fêtes et qui entretiennent des cadins, la 300 ans qu'on nous écrase, assez de mensonges et de phrases, on ne veut plus